I wanted to kind of explain what front-loading joy is for me and why I feel like it's such an important part of being human, recognizing that we have opportunities to feel joy and that we don't have to wait until our to-do list is done to feel them, or that we deserve to feel joy only if and when we accomplish certain things or feel certain things or do certain things. So for me, especially in this time, I honestly, I, I think everyone is impacted regardless, because it's been such a contentious political system in the United States. Everyone is impacted. Every one of us has friends or relatives that we're struggling to have connection with. Every one of us is feeling the anxiety. And in the words of Gabor Mate, who is a renowned expert on addiction, his anxiety level has heightened and is stabilized at a higher rate, and that's what we want to try to lower. Not his in particular in this case. He was actually talking about depression and how his serotonin levels are much lower. But in this case, anxiety can be really, really, it can be your go-to. It can be the place where you automatically feel for it. You maybe even search it out. There's a really great tool from Phil Stutz. Let me share my screen here. Linda's reaching for her glasses. Okay, this is my version of Stutz tool. And as you can see, there's been some tea spilled, which is not ironic as far as I'm concerned. This is where we are. This is where we live, our comfort zone. And that does not mean that it's not painful. It's just pain that we're used to. It's just anxiety that we're used to. And sometimes we cycle in this area because it feels comfortable. Does not have to be good or healthy, but that's where we cycle. This is challenging, and this could be anything from uncertainty, something scary, even hunger, unknowns, a mystery, and it can also be pain and fear that we turn away from, we resist, we procrastinate, we do any number of things to not go to this place. There is a tool that he uses, and he uses the phrase, bring it. And when you say things like that in your gut, it amplifies an emotional response that can be helpful. It sends out hormones that are going to help you move through this unknown. The irony for many of us is that we have shut down almost all of our emotions because of food. And so this comfort zone that we're living in is a cycle of food dysfunction as well. This is the place where we get to explore all of the interesting emotional impacts that have an effect on us, that we are terrified of feeling. And if you can experience those emotions, even one time, even for a hot second, dipping your toe in it, you might realize it's not as scary as you thought it was, and that you can get to fulfillment and joy and delight over having accomplished something that had otherwise been untenable or impossible. So when I talk about front-loading joy, what I am doing for myself is putting joy as much as possible in the beginning of my day, just like anything else that I do. Now, not everyone has the luxury. I do have the capability at 3:30 in the morning of turning on my iTunes and blasting out and singing at the top of my lungs. Not everyone can do that. That's my front-loading joy, okay? I've actually heard from my neighbors that they delight in waking to go potty and hearing Sonia singing. Singing actually is a really great way to activate and calm your parasympathetic nervous system. Your vagus nerve runs here on either side. And the vagus nerve is the thing that runs all the way down on the left side. It runs all the way down to your poop chute on the right side. It monitors your heart. The vagus nerve is designed to be your alert system. It's the thing, if you can imagine sensors around your compound, it's the sensor, and it will highlight anything that feels like it might be dangerous. And that's why we get so charged and so triggered so early. Even if it's not something that is that if we were to sit in a moment and think about it, it wouldn't be actually awful. It's not affecting me. It's how someone else is perceiving things. It's their reaction to something. It's not something that I need to deal with. It's an external situation. Most of our anxiety and worry and triggering happens because we're activated internally. And that's something we do actually have control over. Once we realize something, once we notice something, just like we realized, many of us, most of us have realized that eating now uncontrollably is not healthy. Once we know something, I said once before that bright line eating, more than once, bright line eating ruined eating for me. That's not a bad thing, but it is a fact. I can't go back. I know this now. I know that when I grab for something, I'm going to think, wait a minute, am I really hungry? Is this really necessary? This is outside of my plan. This doesn't make any sense for me other than there's something triggering me. So front-loading joy is a really important for me way to lower and ground myself before the day even starts. Does that make sense? You don't have to sing at the top of your lungs, although I do want you to hear that my mother, who was an opera singer, believed very firmly that everyone has the capacity to learn how to sing. It's a muscle. It's no different than learning how to play pickleball. God bless me. I'm really going to try it at some point in my lifetime. But for now, I know how to vacuum really well. And that muscle is very much ingrained in my life. I also know how to sing really well. That doesn't mean you have to sing really well. The singing is actually the act that activates the vagus nerve and calms you. It tells you right away. There's nobody in the world, okay, except maybe somebody really, really crazy and silly and goofy and in a movie might start singing if they're being chased by a lion. That's not going to happen. So your brain automatically calms. Your system automatically calms when you're doing something. It could be sitting out and relaxing and enjoying your flowers in the morning. It could be listening to my sweet birds singing. It could be turning on something that is delightful and sweet for you, some sort of a music or some sort of something that is going to stimulate your body in a way that is calming and joyful. You know what that is for you. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you've been so focused on the world and all of the things that you have to do to juggle and keep all of the plates spinning. Maybe you haven't figured that out yet. And maybe it changes for you. But I know for me, it really makes a difference. It grounds everything. It also, if you work in parts language, then the little ones realize, oh my gosh, we're already playing and it's only 3:30 in the morning. I can relax. I don't need to worry that the rest of the day might be a little crazy, a little cattywampus. I know that we've had some time here. I know that Sonia knows I'm important. I know that calming me is helping to calm my whole system. Does that make sense? So what I want to do, here are a few things that other than singing at the top of your lungs at 3:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, whatever time works for you. Oh man, it's so good. The other thing I want to say about singing, you're sustaining notes, especially if you're singing Whitney Houston or Barbra Streisand, somebody like that, right? We're all of an age. We know what that means. If you can hold that note, even for half of as long as Barbara or Whitney does, you're strengthening your diaphragm, but you're also raising your heart rate variability. Another scientific term that is really important. If our heart rate variability is wider, so for instance, I want you to try this for me. This is one of my tools. I'm going to do it first so you can see what I'm doing. And then I want you to try it. Super simple. Doesn't require anything other than paying attention and looking at the screen. So you're going to inhale quickly. and exhale slowly. Okay. Now, I have been singing for a long time and I can sustain my note a lot longer than many people can. That does not mean you have to do it as long as I do. But what I just did was when I inhale quickly, I raise my heart rate. Just think about, any situation where you're trying to get ready to run, right? You're raising your heart rate. When I sustain that note and I call it straw breathing. When you exhale slowly, what you're doing is lowering your heart rate in the span of just a moment. And that means your heart rate variability is wide. That's never going to happen if you're in a panic situation. Your vagus nerve on your right side takes over and says, nope, we are maintaining everything. We're making sure that Sonia's heart rate does not go above a certain point because that would kill her. So the heart rate variability factor goes away because the vagus nerve is activated and monitoring and maintaining the heart rate at a certain rate. So it doesn't go too high. Heart rate variability is a big measure. There's Mind Math, I think, is a company or an organization that does a lot of work with that. There's a lot of study that's been going on. My watch and my Oura Ring both measure my heart rate variability overnight. And it's a sign, as a matter of fact, if my heart rate variability is too low, it means I've eaten too late at night. It's an interesting factor. If my heart rate variability is wider, that means that I've had a good, solid, long sleep and that it's been covering the gamut from the REM sleep that we get near the beginning of the night. That means I've gone to sleep when I'm tired rather than pushing through. So my REM sleep happens near the beginning of the night for the most part. I'm sorry, my deep sleep happens near the beginning and REM sleep happens later in the night. But that arc is really important for measuring. You don't need to have all this data. I'm a data geek, so it's what I do. But it's helped me in understanding what's going on with my body. So the straw breathing, I want you to do something for me real quickly. I want you to take a moment and tell me how you're feeling right now. One word in the chat thread, or two or three if you need to. I'm rather verbose myself if you haven't noticed. So just right now, how you're feeling. Okay. I had a quick question about the comfort zone. The reason that there's an arrow looping back is that we live in a little cycle, a tiny little cycle. This is our general world, and it cycles back and forth. That's what that means. So, like I said before, you may have lots of pain. We all do. We have anxiety, we have worries, we have guilt, shame, grief, judgment, trauma, joy, delight, giddiness. We all have those things. They're measured and they're quieted the more we eat. But this is our comfort zone, and this is the world we live in. And that's why I circle around when I do this, when I point out this area, because it is literally the place that we live. And it can be a big circle if we've got a lot going on, but it's still our comfort zone. I'm comfortable with the anxiety level that I get from my kids. I'm comfortable with the anxiety level about having lost my parents. I'm comfortable with all of those kinds of anxieties, but there's certain things that are really challenging. And that's what this is. When we'd rather resist and we'd rather procrastinate, or we'd rather escape and move out to something else, or we'd rather eat. Okay. So what I want to do now, so we're going to do a minute of regular breathing, and I want you to just try to breathe regularly and count the number of breaths that you have. And then we're going to do straw breathing. Okay, so I'm going to set my timer here. And I just want you to breathe regularly as you would if you just pretend you're working on a report for your boss. And if your boss is you because you're retired, you're probably a much more, a much harder boss than some. Okay. All right, let's start and we'll count our breaths. All right, this is not a competition, but I'd love for you to put your number in the chat thread. Okay, now we're going to do a minute of the straw breathing. You remember what I do? I inhale, and you can either inhale through your nose. It's actually faster to inhale through your mouth and out again. There's a lot of science that says we should do only nasal breathing, but for the purposes of this exercise, I want you to see what will happen for you. Now, I want you to take a measure of how you are feeling right now, and then we'll start. And remember, again, we're inhaling quickly and exhaling slowly, like you're exhaling through a straw. It's helpful to purse your lips like that because it's an extra guard against exhaling too quickly. And we're going to do a minute and we'll see how this goes. Okay.
Through our mouth or through our nose?
You mean for the exhale?
Inhale.
Inhale, you can do either one. I think you inhale quicker if you inhale through your mouth.
Okay.
So inhale quickly and then exhale slowly through your straw pursed lips. Okay, let's go. And stop. Now, one thing I didn't mention that I probably should have is that we don't want you to get dizzy. We don't want you to work too hard to extend that length, because the point of this is actually chances are high, and I use that word ironically, chances are high that your blood pressure is going to lower. People use this to counteract the white coat syndrome. People use this when they're sitting before they get their blood pressure taken. People do this when they're going into a meeting or when they're going to be doing anything that feels nerve-wracking or anxiety building. Straw breathing is a beautiful tool that you can use multiple times a day. I figured you did, Jill. Yeah, no worries. What was everybody's number? No competition here. Just really curious about the difference. Between your first number and your second number. I have a long history of asthma. thank God I figured out, and I got rid of the foods and the environmental things, and I did the work that I needed to do to get rid of it. I haven't had a cold, a serious one in 10 years. And I used to get serious bronchitis 3 or 4 times a year. I went to get a DEXA scan or a bone density scan yesterday. And she asked me about my prednisone usage, and I just started laughing because she said, well, were you ever on extended prednisone? I said, well, what is extended for you? And she said 6 weeks or more. And I just started laughing. I've been on it for months at a time to control my breathing from severe bronchitis and allergies, or I'm sorry, and pneumonia, things like that. My allergies would shift into some illness pretty quickly. So, yeah, see you, Tanya. So how do you feel after doing that straw breathing? Can you, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though I had 11 breaths both times, and I started off feeling tired, doing that second round of the quick, slow, I feel more awake. That was my first thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Energy inducing. Absolutely. And there's an intentionality to it. And when you're inhaling quickly, it's very different from, regular breathing. We have a tendency to breathe very shallowly, as a rule. And so this actually requires that we do more effort to fill our lungs. It's just a very healthy thing all the way around. And lungs are a really important thing. I started my healing journey with food when I couldn't breathe. Breathing, to me, is obviously kind of important. I remember calling the ambulance and wondering whether or not I would be able to get support before I couldn't breathe. So imagine that. And that was happening for me, unfortunately, way too often. And my doctors were like, no, we'll just give you more medicine. So so Kate, you said you feel quieter? Yeah. It's really calming. Whenever you sense, just like when I said bright line eating is ruined eating for me, because it's made me more aware. And sometimes when we're more aware, we can get a little anxious about wanting this thing to, okay, now I know about this thing. I want it done. I want it moved. I want it over. I recognize how bad this is for me, and I'm still watching myself go and eat, for instance. Or I recognize that this situation is really untenable, and yet I still can't do anything about it. It feels more frustrating. And that's when straw breathing can be really helpful, because that's your insides. That's your insides that are activated. Rightly so, because that activation can be very powerful. It can help move us to a place of deciding, okay, I'm going to do these things, or I'm going to enact these tools, or I'm going to pay more attention to this kind of thing in order to release that anxiety, in order to lessen that anxiety. So the numbers, Jennifer, Linda, Jill, Kate, me, the numbers are quite different in the process. I just want you to hear, there are so many tools available to us. And this is one nobody even needs to know you're doing. Okay? There is an aspect of us that wants to put on a good front, wants to belong, or wants to fit in, wants to make things all nice and pretty. And doing a tapping session because someone is driving us a little crazy is probably not a good idea in the moment, right? That's probably when they're sitting across from you at dinner. So taking a minute for this straw breathing, nobody needs to know that you're doing it, but you. And that's the whole point of this. This is for you. I heard an analogy today that struck me as really, really powerful. And I hope I can amplify this in the way that it meant for me. This was again from Gabor Mate. And he was talking about triggers. We often in our communities and in our lives work really hard to support other people by not triggering them, right? But think about the trigger in relation to a gun. The trigger is just one component of that gun. There is the ammunition and the explosion. There's so much about that. And guess what? The trigger is the response that we have to being reminded about something that is really hard that we haven't finished working through yet. And that's our work, and that's our way of seeing it for what it is. It's not going to be fixed in a moment or a day, and it may not be fixed at all, but what it might do for you is give you a different path or a different perspective on it, especially if you can share in community so that you can recognize that others feel the same way as you do. That really makes a big difference. So think about your triggers and what you can do to relax the underlying responses that you have to them. Straw breathing is one of those. It's a big one. I don't know. This week in the magic, I've presented, I don't know, 5 or 6 tools. And I'll be continuing to do that in the magic throughout what I call sugar season magic. Yeah, Jennifer says I was able to avoid a panic attack in public using straw breathing recently. Yeah. It's an incredible tool. We have to know about it. We have to practice it because that's when it's going to be available in that moment. Because frankly, when we're triggered, our prefrontal cortex goes offline. So that whole idea of all of the tools at our disposal aren't always available, but those that are automatic can be available to you. And one of those is straw breathing. So I just want to say that there are so many tools out here. You can support yourself by doing that front load joy at the beginning of the day. Unfortunately, with the way that YouTube and Facebook are about playing music and singing together, it's really challenging. It doesn't allow me to do that. There's copyright laws all over the place. I would love to have a singing, dancing party, and maybe we will at some point. We just won't be able to record it. But for today, I wanted to offer you something that I know seems very simple, but you've already noticed the impact of it. I will guarantee you, if you have had a strenuous or an exhausting or an anxiety-ridden morning and you checked your blood pressure and then you did straw breathing and checked it again, you're going to see a huge difference. Yeah. Are there any questions about this before we head out and magify our day? I just want to share something with you if I can. All you have to do to get that, other than, call Sonia and say, can you just let the birds sing for a little while for me? It's YouTube canary song. Just have it playing in the background. It's incredible. It's amazing.
Where do you get that? What's it called?
Well, these are my birds. These are canaries. They're the ones making that noise.
Okay.
Like, I can't control them.
Oh, okay.
Right now they're not singing. They stopped singing, but they will start again. They're pretty. There's not a time of the day when I can tell you when they're going to start singing. As you can tell, and sometimes they're super loud because they're both boys. Male canaries sing really loudly. Long story on the canary business, but my mother used to have canaries in our house when I was growing up, and because of this sound, right? It's just amazing. And about 6 weeks before my mother passed, Jackie and I were talking about canaries, and she said, well, maybe we can get one. So we got one. We rescued her, actually. She was in the back room because people were bothering her and she was struggling and getting all agitated because all she wanted to do was lay eggs. Anyway, we rescued her, and but she was a female. She doesn't sing. Okay? That was the purpose of it. So Jackie looked all around. She goes, I know we've got a male in here somewhere. And we thought, well, it's not a big deal. We'll put them together. They're not going to. Well, guess what? She laid 5 eggs within 3 days, and 3 of them hatched. And so we have 1 male and 2 females, and they can't be in the same room. So both males are here. This is the original papa. And this is baby G. I called him G because we weren't sure if he was male or female, but he was born the day after my mom passed. My mom and my dad were both singers. So I thought, well, we'll name him Grandma or Grandpa. We'll just call him G. Canary singing. All you have to do is Google that on YouTube, and there's hours and hours of it, and it's really stunning. It's stunning. And can drive some of my friends who have hearing aids a little nuts because it's extra loud for them. But I love it. So that's the kind of thing. When you're paying attention to it, you have to notice your joy. You have to amplify it in your minds. There are billions of things every day that we see, billions of things that we experience every day. Amplifying the positive, amplifying the joyful, amplifying the gratitude, amplifying the delight, amplifying the giddy. It's not going to make you eat more, but it's going to shift your perspective so that you're not always berating yourself when you do eat off plan, so that you relax on that, which is a huge part of healing. So, lots to discuss, lots more. If you liked this call, if you want more of these, I'm happy to do them on Sunday mornings. This is usually a time when I'm available, and it doesn't take any pressure or any work for me to put this together. But I do think that more front-loading joy in your life will never be a bad thing. Never be a bad thing. Anything else for the good of the order? If you all could unmute for me, I would really love the delight of your voice.
Thank you,
Saying
Sonia.
goodbye.
I want to say thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
doing
you.
Thanks.
Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Go find magic. It's everywhere. You just have to notice it. Bye, guys.
Bye.